And you know what's so sad about this whole thing, Art? Guess who bought out the catalog from the Jackson estate after they allegedly unalived Michael Jackson? Guess who owns the music now?
Who's that?
Sony Record. What did his mother say, Art? Queen Mother Catherine Jackson. She did an interview with Dateline in 2010, Art. And Catherine Jackson said that Michael Jackson used to call her and say, Mom, they want to take my life. She said he kept telling me over and over that they want to take my life for what I know. And I think, Art, he's talking about his knowledge and mastery of the music business. And Catherine Jackson said that her son, Michael Jackson, told her, keep an eye out on my catalog. He said, some very evil, greedy men want my catalog, Art. His mother said she told him this. Some very evil, greedy men want my catalog. Art, it is a shame what they did to Michael Jackson. Sony Records was bankrupting Michael Jackson to try to force him to turn over all of his music. They signed with him to destroy him and take his music. Same thing Warner Brothers did with Prince, allegedly, that led to his premature execution. Stay with me, Art. So 2001, Invincible comes out. It goes several times platinum, but that's a flop. So the next year, Michael Jackson has a protest in New York City with Al Sharpton, and he calls Tommy Mottola, the head of Sony Records, a devil and a racist. You remember that, don't you? He called him a devil and a racist, and he said that he called Irv Gotti, rest in peace to Irv, Murder Inc. He said he called Irv Gotti a fat ninja. Now, Art, the year after Michael Jackson has that protest against Sony Records in New York where he calls Tommy Mottola a racist and a devil. That was 2002, July. Guess what, Art? The next year, he's arrested for child sex molestation. You're not going to tell me that's a coincidence. But with that being said, Art, Michael Jackson doesn't become Michael Jackson without Joe Jackson. In other words, Michael Jackson, Art, was a chosen one. Mike was chosen. Anybody who looks at that man with the talent and the gifts that he had, he was born to inspire through his music. His record, Thriller album, 135 times platinum, I think it is now, that'll never be broken. He came to this world to inspire through his music. And just like Christ, he was unalived because of his mission. Now let's run through the timeline, Mike. Let's run through the timeline, Art. Thriller, Michael Jackson's sixth album. Most people don't know Michael Jackson had 5 albums before Thriller, Art. 5 of them. One of them was produced right here in Philadelphia. Kenny Gamble, Gamble and Huff. Michael lived in Philly for a minute while he was working on the one album with Gamble and Huff. So anyway, he had 5 studio albums. Thriller was the 6th. He left Motown, got with Quincy Jones. They do Thriller. Thriller is released November the 29th of 1982, Art. November 29th, 1982. By 1984, it is put in the Guinness Book of World Records as the #1 selling. But with that being said, Art, Michael Jackson doesn't become Michael Jackson without Joe Jackson. In other words, Michael Jackson, Art, was a chosen one. Mike was chosen. Anybody who looks at that man with the talent and the gifts that he had, he was born to inspire through his music. His record, Thriller album, 135 times platinum, I think it is now, that'll never be broken. He came to this world to inspire through his music. And just like Christ, he was unalived because of his mission. Now let's run through the timeline, Mike. Let's run through the timeline, Art. Thriller, Michael Jackson's sixth album. Most people don't know Michael Jackson had 5 albums before Thriller, Art. 5 of them. One of them was produced right here in Philadelphia. Kenny Gamble and Huff. Michael lived in Philly for a minute while he was working on the one album with Gamble and Huff. So anyway, he had 5 studio albums. Thriller was the 6th. He left Motown, got with Quincy Jones. They do Thriller. Thriller is released November the 29th of 1982, Art. November 29th, 1982. By 1984, it is put in the Guinness Book of World Records as the #1 selling. So he's still riding Thriller, Art. He's still riding the wave. But Mike doesn't settle. Most entertainers would have done what? Chilled with their money. Mike said, nah. I don't just want to be a musician. I want to own the game. I don't just want to be a musician. I want to own the game. So guess what he does? He buys ATV music catalog, Art, 4,000 songs, 125 Beatles classics, 125 Beatles classics, Elvis Presley's music, a sizable collection of Elvis music. Guess who else, Art? Little Richard, Bruce Springsteen, Cher, and a whole host of other artists. Art, he owns their publishing. Michael Jackson does this. It's the largest music publishing acquisition by a single artist in history. That is 1985. So he's on top of the world, Art, on top of the world. And then guess what he does? A decision that he will regret. In 1991, he signs a 15-year, 6-album deal with Sony Records. A 15-year, 6-album deal with Sony Records. This deal, Art, will bring Michael Jackson $1 billion plus over the course of the 15-year contract. Michael Joseph Jackson was the Malcolm X of the music. Look at this, Art. I got the #1 album. I'm going to buy a 4,000 song catalog that gives me the publishing rights to the Beatles, Elvis, Rolling Stones, and Bruce Springsteen. Look at this, Art. And then I'm going to turn around, sign a contract with Sony that's going to turn me into a billionaire. And then I'm going to buy Marvel Comics. Art, when he bought that 4,000 song catalog in 85, and when he put the bid in for Marvel Comics in 93, that's when the white power structure said, I think they might have decided right then, Art, if we can't control him, we're going to unalive him. If we can't control him, they never had a black artist, Art. Sam Cooke owned his own music. Sam Cooke had his own record label. But Sam Cooke didn't have the #1 selling album in human history. Sam Cooke didn't buy a 4,000 album catalog. Michael Joseph Jackson was moving like the Malcolm X of the music industry, Art. He gets accused of child sex abuse in 93, 13-year-old boy. He settles out of court for $22 million. He gets accused again in 1996, Art, while he's still trying to get Marvel Comics. And then, Art, the 2003 accusation comes right after he criticizes Sony Records. I believe, Art, allegedly, this is all alleged, I believe Sony Records paid those people to accuse Michael Jackson of those crimes, Art, so he could go to jail, so they could bankrupt him through prison fees and bankrupt him through debt, like they did Bill Cosby, Art, like they trying to do Sean Combs. The judge throws it out. In 2015, the judge throws it out. But guess what happens then? HBO HBO Art decides to do a documentary on these two white boys, Robson and Safechuck, called Leaving Neverland. And guess who does the promo interview with these two liars? None other than Oprah Winfrey, the richest woman in the history of North America. Can you tell me why Oprah Winfrey would stab Michael Jackson in the back in his death, Art? In his death. She interviews these two liars on her show, promoting the HBO documentary. And guess what happens after the documentary comes out in 2019, Art? In 2020, the courts changed the law, and they say if you was a victim of child sex abuse, we're now going to allow you to bring that old suit back to court. I loved it. I loved it. It was great. Everybody needs to see it. However, as a Michael Jackson enthusiast, I did expect to learn something that I did not already know. I think the movie was perfect for millennials, Art. But if you were a Generation Xer, you already knew everything in that movie. I would have appreciated a little bit more insight into the family dynamic. In other words, how was his relationship with each of his siblings? And how was their relationship with Michael's success? And how did their parents relate to them in the context of Michael's success? Did they feel left out? Did they feel overlooked? Did they feel pushed to the side? Because his brothers had no voice in the movie, Art. The Jackson 5 had no voice. The sisters really didn't have no voice. Where was Rebe? She wasn't represented. Janet wasn't represented. I really felt the movie focused a little too much on his relationship with his father.
You already know I gotta ask you, man. You being a big Michael Jackson fan, you seen the Michael movie?
I've seen the new Michael Jackson movie starring his nephew, Jafar. First of all, I want to say Jafar Jackson did a supreme job. Superb art. That young man should get Oscar for Best Actor. I doubt that happens because they already gave it to our brother Michael B. Jordan. And as you know, we only get it every 10 to 15 years. But Jafar Jackson deserves Best Actor. Absolutely. He channeled his uncle as only a nephew can do. I'm a Michael Jackson fan. I wanted to be Michael Jackson. I had the jackets, the gloves. I did the dance. My mother named me after his older brother, Jermaine. I was born Jermaine, not Umar. My father changed my name when I was approximately 7 years of age. So how dare you celebrate known pedophiles, Art? They're celebrating known pedophiles. But you want black people to publicly lynch Michael Jackson, who was acquitted of all charges of his 2005 trial, Art. Acquitted of all charges. And I saw an interview with my Philadelphia brother Coleman Domingo and my beautiful sister Nia Long. They were promoting the Michael movie, and it was on one of those Neanderthal talk shows, and somebody asked them about the fact that the child sex allegations were not covered. And they said, well, this movie was about the first half of his life. Well, that might be true, Art, but part 2 is coming out. And part 2 better not slander Michael. So Antoine Fuqua, the director, brother, if they want you to slander Michael Jackson's image in part 2, don't do it. In 2013, Art, Wade Robson and James Safechuck accused Michael Jackson of molesting them for approximately 7 years, with most of the molestation coming between 1988 and 1992. What's wrong with this allegation, Art? Not only did they wait till he passed, but they defended Michael Jackson at his 2005 trial, Art. They defended him. and said he was innocent. They defended Michael Jackson against the boy. And after Michael Jackson dies, they come out and say he molested us. Money grab. Straight up money grab. Art, you mean to tell me you get molested between 1988 and 1992, and you wait until 02, 12. You wait 22 years to tell anybody. 22 years to tell anybody, and conveniently Michael Jackson is dead. But guess what happens, Art? But when he decided to push the tour back so he could practice and perfect the stage performances, that gave a certain music company enough time to plan Michael Jackson's demise. And on June the 25th, 2009, Art, exactly 2 weeks and 4 days before the first concert, 2 weeks and 4 days before the first concert, a black doctor helped him overdose on Provolol, I believe it is, and Michael Jackson was unalive. Art, are you going to tell me it's a coincidence that Michael Jackson dies 2 weeks before the first concert? He dies a few months before Sony was due to return his masters. Look how convenient this is, Art. Look how convenient. You die right before you're supposed to get your master recordings back for the #1 selling album in world history. Now, let me go back for a minute, Art. Let me go back to 1993. First of all, I can't believe that you got Caucasian Nation out here, white America, running around complaining, Art, that the movie did not cover the child sex abuse allegations. How dare Caucasian Nation get upset because the movie didn't cover the child sex allegations? Art, the movie doesn't need to cover the child sex allegations. Not part 1, not part 2. And why not, Art? Because Michael Jackson was never convicted of any child sex allegations. Had he been convicted, I could possibly understand. But just like white people do with their heroes, they don't talk about the negative stuff in their life. They talk about the positive stuff in their life. They just had a movie come out about Elvis Presley. Priscilla was sleeping in that man's house since she was 14 years old, and white people still celebrate Elvis. The tour was supposed to begin March of 2009. Michael Jackson pushes the tour back. This was fatal, Art. This was fatal. Michael Jackson pushes the tour back from March of 2009 to July 13th of 2009. See that? So he's going to hang around in Los Angeles a few months too long. Art, if he gets on that tour, they can't get to him. If he gets on that tour, Art, in March, they can't get to him. But when he decided to push the tour back so he could practice and perfect the stage performances, that gave a certain music company enough time to plan Michael Jackson's demise. And Michael Jackson was unalive. Art, are you going to tell me it's a coincidence that Michael Jackson dies 2 weeks before the first concert? He dies a few months before Sony was due to return his masters. Look how convenient this is, Art. Same thing they did with Puffy, same thing they did with R. Kelly, same thing they did with Bill Cosby. Look at the repetition, Art, the same playbook. The court changed the law so Safechuck and Robson, who I allege are liars, because how you going to say the man innocent, then he guilty 22 years later? So they bring the court case back after leaving Netherlands. California passes a law reviving the old child sex abuse claims. And in August of 2023, Art, the appeals court ruled that they can proceed with their case against MJJ Productions and MJJ Ventures, claiming that Michael Jackson's companies should have protected them from the child sex allegations. Art, how you going to prove child sex allegations in 2026 and it happened in 1992? 02, 12, 22. Art, that's 35 years later, Art. How you going to prove Michael Jackson molested you from 1988 to 1992, 35 years later in 2026, Art? Look at this crap. That lawsuit is in the courts right now, Art. Michael Jackson says, wait a minute. I got a 15-year, 6-album contract. I'm the #1 musician in the world, the #1 entertainer in the world, the highest selling album of all time. I'm the king of music, not just the king of pop. I'm the king of music. And we got a 50% stake in my catalog, and you don't know if you can support me? Guess what Michael says, Art? Mike says, no problem. Let me out the contract. I should have never signed with y'all anyway. Michael Jackson tells Tommy Mottola and Sony Records, let me out the contract. They said, we not doing that. October 30th of 2001, Art, Michael Jackson's last album, Invincible, comes out, right? Sony Records wants Michael Jackson to sign a contract extension. Michael Jackson tells Sony Records, I'm not signing no contract extension. I don't want to be a part of y'all no more. Y'all done already pissed me off. I want my catalog back. I want my personal catalog back. I want my ATV catalog back. And I'm done with you racist Neanderthal. In 2004, Eminem, the white Jesus of hip hop, Eminem attacks Michael Jackson. He comes out with a song called Just Lose It, 2004. He's mocking Michael Jackson's surgery. He's mocking Michael Jackson's child sex abuse charges. In 2007, Art, I don't know if this was in retaliation for what Eminem did to him or not, but in 2007, Sony ATV, which is Sony and Michael Jackson, they purchase, Art, the Famous Music LLC catalog. Guess what this gives them, Art? 125,000 songs. Eminem's entire back catalog, all the way up until his 2004 Encore album. Michael Jackson and Sony owns the publishing of all of Eminem's records up until that time. Basically, you make a mockery of me, I'll buy out your catalog. That's how Michael Jackson paid back Eminem. This makes Michael Jackson basically a 50% owner with Sony Records, right? My third rule of racism is what? White people don't share power with black people. White people do not share power with black people. Sony Records did not sign Michael to those 2 contracts. Sony Records, Art, did not sign Michael Jackson to those 2 contracts just for him to be with them for 15 years. They brought him to the table so they could take over his music completely. And I believe, allegedly, let me say allegedly, I believe this same company was the cause of Michael Jackson's death. Allegedly, I believe that. Now, stay with me. As soon as Michael signs the contract in 95, Art, for the catalogs, he automatically starts falling out with Tommy Mottola. Michael Jackson was playing to be the king, bro. Michael Jackson, as much as he loved white people and kids, and I'll never understand that because they all turned on him, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. But as much as Michael Jackson loved white people and white kids, Art, he was the Malcolm X of the music business. Michael Joseph Jackson was the Malcolm X of the music. Look at this, Art. I got the #1 album. I'm going to buy a 4,000 song catalog that gives me the publishing rights to the Beatles, Elvis, Rolling Stones, and Bruce Springsteen. Look at this, Art. And then I'm going to turn around, sign a contract with Sony that's going to turn me into a billionaire, and then I'm going to buy Marvel Comics. Art, when he bought that 4,000 song catalog in 85, and when he put the bid in for Marvel Comics in 93, that's when the white power structure said, I think they might have decided right then, if we can't control him, we're going to unalive him.